level of penetration in Nigeria is less than 1%. Insurance is not part of our culture. We make this joke that one of the biggest competitions to insurance is the blood of Jesus. Everyone says, I'm covered in the name of Jesus. So
how do you feel that the market has shifted?
there's a place for technology within the insurance industry. 10 years ago, maybe we had 1-2 players, trying to do something in the space. But look now, more than 30 players within the space doing different things, different models. One of the things that we see as well is players who have presence in other markets across the continent and even outside come into the space to see what is possible. Innovators coming to provide a different perspective, a different experience for customers. The change that the insurance industry needs, it has to come from outside.
I really like the fact that you mentioned Asia and Africa, the proximity and the similarities.
Whatever anybody is building, that solution has to solve for trust. It's not quite a disruption conversation. It's an evolution conversation. Insurance needs to still remain insurance. However, how do we deliver it in a different way? The customer's requests and needs are evolving. So how do we get insurance to this new reality? Something as simple as proposal forms when you want to buy insurance, made a digital version. What questions do I need to take out so that instead of 20-30 minutes, it just takes 5 minutes? What parts can I remove without compromising security, data requirements? That is the journey that a lot of insurance companies need to go on.
Are there some business models you say, this is incredibly exciting?
Absolutely. Interestingly, if you look...
Welcome to the pod. Welcome to the pod, Adedamola. I was looking forward to this one. You're our first Nigerian guest, eh? Welcome to the pod, Adedamola.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, very interesting. I'm looking forward to speaking. I know you're Nigerian as well, so I want to hear that story.
Yeah. And that's the thing. We're going to jump into it. I left when I was 2 and I haven't been back, and hopefully this year is going to be the comeback, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to having you.
As I'll twinkle my Igbo side. And we're actually in the Short Tech Insights. I think it was 2 years ago. I wore the full trash to it. Yeah,
that must have been interesting.
but it's about you, Adedamola. I want the audience to get a feel about you. You've done a lot of good stuff in the Short Tech space and really shining the light of Africa and what's happening in Nigeria and from a Pan-African view, right? Yeah. So I want to just give you the floor to give a bit of background on yourself, Adedamola, right? And then we're going to segue into InsurTech and Africa as a whole, right? But I'll give you the floor, Adedamola.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to come on the pod. I run a podcast, and being on this side of the mic is very, very different. But yeah, my background is, if I go back, it's not even in insurance, right? Communications major. Had my master's in communications. Along the line, I think I've heard this a lot, even from my engagement in the past. I mean, it's going to 10 years now. People stumble into insurance, and I did stumble into insurance, right? And I started off, I started off as an agent, here in Nigeria, working with an insurance company, selling on the streets of Lagos. That was hard. that was hard. But I think looking back now, it was a learning curve, and that I was happy about, right?
Yes.
I was able to engage directly with customers to understand their perspective and the reason why they buy or not buy insurance, right? So, and I think that's true about a lot of agents and across the world. They know the customer, and that you cannot take away. And that's why, when COVID hit and there was talk about replacing the agents, I was just not really.
You didn't want it to happen.
It's not possible because people still want to speak with someone, right? To an extent, and so on that journey, when I entered into the insurance space, trying to sell insurance, difficult as it is or it was, I quickly took the initiative to start my professional certification to really understand what insurance is, right? So if this insurance is this good, why are people not buying it?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that started my journey in insurance proper. Took up the certification, and 3 years down the line, I got my certification, became an associate of the Chartered Insurance Institute of Nigeria. And within that journey, right, a lot of things were coming to mind because I was seeing people not buy insurance. And I say, hey, I'm learning these things through the program, right, the certification program, saying, hey, insurance can do this and this and that. And interesting thing, through those programs, well, we were seeing use cases in developed countries in the UK, and then saying, okay, these are the ways that insurance is helping. And I'm like, okay, why are people averse to it? And so I started looking at other markets, say, how is it happening in other markets? What's interesting? Within that time, COVID hit and things like that. And I was engaging with people online. I started engaging with Brian Falchuk, if you know, Rob
Yes.
Galbraith, Sabine,
Yes.
just seeing them their work and say, hey, okay, there's a place for insurance and innovation. There's a place for technology within the insurance industry. And so those are things that piqued my interest. And this was coming on the back of, hey, I just wanted to do something different. I didn't want to just be insurance professional and things like that, right? So that's how my journey in the insurance industry, sort of started, right? And my keen interest in insurance innovation and things like that. And it's been interesting. When COVID hit, one of the things that then happened was, okay, I'm learning some of these things. How can I help other people learn? And so that's why I collaborated with, one of my colleagues who also has a background in communication, but was also in insurance at that time, to start the InsurTech Business Series podcast. And through the
Yes.
podcast, we engage a lot of people across the world to hear about what they are doing in their own space, what we can adopt, what we can adapt to our own realities, especially on the African market. Yeah, so fast forward from then till now, it's been very interesting, and a lot of things have come along the way.
No, I want to bring us back to that time your first encounters as an agent, right? Knocking on doors, right? Because there must be some interesting stories from that particular era.
A lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. I think it was, you know, the level of penetration in Nigeria is less than 1%, right? So insurance is not part of our culture. And so when you have conversations with people, many of the insurance products that you're able to sell a lot easier is the compulsory insurances. So motor insurance, for example,
Yeah.
in a lot of markets, that's compulsory, right? Outside of that, when you're talking about life insurance, right? Uh, I, I mean, culture is something that is huge for us when it comes to Africa, and then even in Nigerian space. So nobody wants to talk about death. So by the time
Yes.
you have the conversations around, oh, life insurance, this is what it can bring for you in case you pass on and things like that. Why are you talking to me about death? I'm not going to die. And we make this joke that one of the biggest competitions to insurance is the blood of Jesus,
A
right?
hundred
Because
percent.
everyone
A
says
hundred
I'm
percent.
covered in the name of in the name of Jesus. Culture, yes, definitely, but religion as well is huge, right? And so those are some of the challenges, at the time. But because of the determination and the focus as to how I wanted to see the opportunities in insurance. That kept me on. I got better. I started off as a shy person, right? But I'm a salesperson, and we're living. If you don't sell, you don't earn. It's commission,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so I had to come out of that shell, and so that's why I'm grateful for those years, because those are formative years for me to get to where I am today. Look at me, hosting podcast sessions and speaking to people across the world.
It's fantastic. The model, like I always say, there's nothing like speaking to the actual end customer, right? And when I
Yeah.
started exploring the initial, market in Africa, right? You're right. If you say God is my insurance, that's some of the things that came across in some of the conversations, right? But you
Yeah.
mentioned as well that that you go through certification. There's a great product, right? And people don't understand the product because at the end of the day, it's intangible, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel that the market has shifted? Do you feel that the market now is becoming more mature in terms of for the penetration is still low, right? In Europe, we have early teens as well, so it's not as high, right? But do you feel that the market has shifted through the decade now? Your decade in insurance. What have you seen so far? There?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it has definitely grown, right?
Mm,
If you look at the insurance industry and you look at the data from the regulator, you see that the insurance industry has grown double digits year on year
mm,
for a long period, right? So there's growth, right, on that side. Um, Insurance, if you look back at 10 years ago when I started to now,
mm,
is definitely different. Why? Because a lot more products, right?
mm.
People are a lot more intentional, right? And in terms of risk, I think COVID played a huge role, right? Risk came in the forefront of everyone, and
Sure.
maybe health insurance is one of the major beneficiaries of this, right? So people are a lot more aware, not as aware as we need them to be, but
Mm,
they're a lot more aware, right? There's a lot of push recently now in terms of uh, the compulsory insurance and how to mandate it and implement it and push it, right? Ensure that people are adhering to having those sort of insurance in place, right? So it's a lot better, right? I think one of the major things as well that made it better is the entrance of new players on the insurer side, but most importantly on the insurtech side,
yes.
right? So we see innovators coming to the space to provide a different perspective, a different journey, a different experience for
Mm.
customers, right? And that's very key and something that I'm very passionate about. I'm keen to see how we can do a lot more for or with.
And I have to give a shout out to one of them. Right? And I know you know more about the company. I want to hear your views on the company. Cassava was very interesting company, right? The
Okay.
branding was very unique, was very African as a brand, but also had that feel of really edgy tech. New frontier
Yeah.
of insurtech, right? You could have been in San Francisco, for example, right? The way they branded themselves. What were your
Yeah.
views on Cassava and other, disruptors that came in? Because it would be great to unpack some models that you've seen that are exciting you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the space has grown, right? So we started doing some mapping, and when I say we, I'm talking about what I do with the InsurTech Business Series, which is a podcast that I host. And we started doing some mapping in terms of the InsurTech players,
Mm.
and interestingly, if you look 10 years ago, right? Maybe we had one, two players,
Few.
trying to do something in the space. But look now, we have almost 30, more than 30 players within the space doing different things, different models,
Nice.
different market segments, right?
Mm.
So Cassava is definitely one of them, and we have a number of them as well who are pioneering different things, right? Outside of Cassava, we have on the motor insurance side, we have PayU, we have ETAP, for example, who are providing usage-based insurance,
Mm.
right, pioneering things within that space, right? We have players in the micro insurance space. Cassava is playing, micro health space.
Mm.
The likes of MyCover.ai, Wella Health,
Yes.
right? We have the people in the pension space as well. Our bar, right? I can go on and on, right? But we have players like Turaco as well. And one of the things that we see as well is players who have presence in other markets, like in
Mm.
Ghana, Kenya, are coming into the space, right? You see, IU Africa, who backed by MTN and Sanlam. Sanlam is one of the biggest
Salam, yeah.
insurance
Hun. Very,
players
very
on the
innovator.
continent. Yes, yes. So you see those players coming to the space, right, to see what is possible and drive the market. So all of those things has helped the space, and
Mm.
we are seeing that new models are being tested. I talked about usage-based insurance. It's within this period as well that we saw regulation around micro insurance, right? And
Mm.
so, how can we create those bite-sized, simple, affordable products, but not cheap products to the expense of quality,
Mm.
right? And that's something that we see a lot of players trying to do as well. So, very interesting times. A lot has been done, but I think that we're just scratching the surface, and a lot more is still left.
And the model of what you've seen, and you can go across Pan Africa if you want, like as well, because some of them will come into Nigeria, some of them are being exported out as well. I know we talked about microinsurance. Are there other models that you've seen that are quite exciting, that are quite innovative? Because I believe in business model innovation will be key for Africa, right?
Yeah.
Less of the tech itself, in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are there some business models you say this is incredibly exciting?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you look at some interesting markets like South Africa, and South Africa has one of the highest
Mm,
levels of penetration across the world, the highest in Africa for sure, but even across the
mm,
world, and the teens. And you see interesting players like Naked, Pineapple, right?
yes.
And these guys are pioneering, models around peer-to-peer insurance, right? So,
Yeah.
and it's going back to the root of what insurance actually is: community coming together. But then
Mm,
also the African, DNA of communal living and being together, being there for each other, right?
mm,
So that kind of peer-to-peer, insurance is something that's very, very interesting. We see a lot of innovation around parametric as well, right? So
mm,
parametric insurance, especially on the agric insurance side, right? So being there for smallholder farmers across the continent. So you see players like Polar, you see players like Oko, right? Eka Africa, interesting things that they are doing in many markets across the continent. So very interesting models, and we see that there are a lot of opportunities, even though they've done a lot of things in terms of number of customers that they've been able to serve. We see that there's
mm,
still a lot more people who need to get the protection that they need, so they need to access this protection. Not that, oh,
mm,
this is insurance, is another product, but
mm,
people actually need this cushion, right? One of the things that we say, and things that we've seen, is that the average African is one illness away from falling back into poverty. Now, what that means is
mm,
that if this person has 50,000 naira, right, for example, in the bank
mm.
account, right, and this is really tied into a lot of conversation around financial inclusion, and my
Literacy.
bros with that, yes, right.
Mm,
If that person has 30,000 naira, 50,000 naira in the bank account, in the pocket, um, malaria can be a reason why that person gets to be, at the end of that same day, is minus 50,000 naira, minus 100,000 naira,
mm,
right? From plus 50,000 naira, right? Because of one illness, right? To himself, to a family member, right?
mm,
So, how do we provide something as simple as a malaria insurance, which is available in the market, for example,
mm,
which costs less than $1? In fact, $1 would buy three of those products, right? Um, because that person with that 30,000 naira, maybe it takes $1 out of that 30,000 naira, and it's
mm,
protected. So when that malaria happens, that 30,000 naira, it stays intact. So he can
mm.
still maintain his or lifestyle. But the insurance then kicks in to take care of it, and there's no out of pocket payment. Right. So that is the vision, that's the big picture, right? But there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of the reality and where we are today. And that's why I said, yes, work has been done, but there's a lot more that still needs to be done.
But on this, the model, right? Well, you're right. I think it's a lot around financial literacy, in a way, right? I love
Hmm.
the part of pulling the community element because it could be a way to
Yeah.
actually bring trust and make the product
Yeah.
more tangible, right?
Yeah.
Say, okay, who maybe use a bit of location data, who's in your neighborhood, can
Hmm.
we pull together and we all
Yeah.
ensure that we can start talking
Yeah.
about it, right? Because normally at
Hmm.
dinner tables in Europe, people talk about insurance, all this kind of things. It makes him. We talked about engagement a lot back in the days. Like we're trying to bring engagement in the insurance, right?
Yeah.
So I really like that model. And anything exciting on that model you saw, because we've seen in savings a lot, right? You pull the savings in, and then you can use it, and then it goes to the next person, and see the
Hmm.
lot that model in Africa. On
Yeah.
on the peer to peer, apart from what Naked is doing and others, is there any other unlock that you've seen on that model that potentially brings more transparency? You know who you share with, you maybe tap
Hmm.
into the GPS. Is there anything exciting you've seen in that particular space?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said a lot of things that that makes me also interested in that model, right? I think on the insurance side, what many of the things that you hear is that concentration of risk, right? Well, I guess that's where innovators come into play. How can you leverage that? So you are looking at it not as a physical location coming together, right? But people of like minds, like interests,
Mm,
right?
exactly.
So you know that once you are joining that pool, you are responsible to each other,
Mm,
right? So it's a mindset, it's an understanding, right? So you know that at the end of this, and you know somehow, some way, it's connected to Takaful insurance,
yes.
right? Another interesting model
Mm,
as well, right? And you see that what that brings to fore is ingraining insurance and adapting insurance to our reality, right, as Africans, because it's speaking to our culture of being one, right, together. We are communal in nature,
mm.
right? Yes, humans are, but for Africa, that's we are connected,
It's
right?
key.
You know, growing up, my mother was not just the person that was seeing me. Every auntie on the street is my mother, so I
Exactly.
can't mess up on the street, right? So everybody's watching. You did. I will
Go
tell
tell
your
mother.
mom, right? In fact, they will beat me on behalf of my mom, and my mom will come back and say, "Oh, thank you very much," right? So I think that's one of the benefits and the interesting things around this model, right? I
Mm,
guess there's a lot of understanding that needs to go into how this can work, and I guess that's where insurers are on that journey, and the kind of products as well that some of these models can support is something that we're on a journey on understanding. But players like Naked and Pineapple, right? They're pioneering this and helping us to see it from a different perspective. And I mean, the other part that they will come to you is it profitable,
of
right?
course.
So I guess it's on that journey, and that's why for me, what I do currently in terms of try to drive innovation and see it from a different point of view. That's insurance. Look at different models, test things out, and take it from there. I think that's something I always advocate as well.
Molly, you mentioned there like your current role in innovation for a global company, right? You talked a bit about Sanlam as well. I do believe the AXA are quite they have that innovation ingrained in them, really doing great things in Europe and Africa. And when even the liquidity left Africa, they kept they stayed in Africa, which was great, right? Because sometimes you know
Yeah,
yourself when you have the liquidity issues, the people just pack their
yeah,
bags and go, right? Can you double click a bit on what you guys are doing, all right, in AXA, and how you
okay.
guys see the world, right? What are the opportunities you can share with us this
Yeah,
year?
we see the world in through the viewpoint of opportunities, right? One of the things that is key for us is to be a partner to our customers, not
Mm,
just a payer, right? We are always acting for human progress by protecting what matters, and what matters to everyone differs, right? So that's why
mm,
we have to look at different models, different products, and how you act for human progress also can differ, right? That's why different models and approaches, they're very important as well. So for me, currently what I do with AXA Nigeria is manage innovation topics, right? And
mm,
that's around working with innovators across the world. Really, we are starting off with those in Nigeria and Africa to say these are the challenges within our value chain in AXA Nigeria. How can you help us solve them,
mm,
right? And so we run a program, right, where we work with startups over a period of time, 12 weeks, and we walk through the understanding of insurance, right? Because many of them are not insurance majors, they're not in insurance. And so we help them understand insurance, help them understand our own journey, right? Because
mm,
we also have been on a journey of innovation for a bit, but then also connect them with those challenge areas, right? And say, okay, how can we collaboratively solve these challenges? And I've been interesting so far, right? Learned a lot on the journey, definitely, right? We have seen a lot of improvements in terms of some things that we've been able to do with a number of partners, right? But there's a lot more. One of the things that is also going good for us is the market that we're in. If you look at the Nigerian market, you mentioned, having to come back, later this year for
Yes,
the FinTech
yes,
Week,
FinTech Week.
right? And that is huge, right? The fintech space is buzzing, right? And so how can we take advantage of that, right? Attracting the innovation that has helped the banking space, the payment space, to grow, attract that into the insurance space because there's a lot more. I mean, at 1%, that's opportunities for me.
I have the vision, but how do I turn these things into a reality?
Well, it's actually simpler than you think. Have you heard of Bob AI? Bob AI is actually like having a team of strategists in your pocket. You can create a business plan in a matter of seconds.
With Bob AI, it feels like I've unlocked the codes to business success.
Bob, make your venture builder more efficient, one idea at a time. I really like that you see the world from the opportunity perspective. But a lot of people, when look at the continent, they just see challenges, right? But
Yeah.
every challenge is an opportunity,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Depends
How you look at it, yeah.
and how you look at it. But from an African perspective, you mentioned even a model about banking. Bank insurance is actually quite big. I really like the model of bank insurance where banking integrated with the insurance, and
Yeah.
now we're seeing it as well in Ireland. A lot of the bank insurance model emerge. Do you think that might be the potential unlock the bank insurance model? Are you seeing now some players, really insurance companies, integrated into the banking providers, seeing that cross pollination of customers, or still new
Yeah.
in the market?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the benefits of the work that we've done as well over the years, engaging with innovators and just seeing what has worked, what has not worked. We get to see that there are some models that have worked in some African markets. When you come to Nigeria, you get the reality check, right? So bank assurance is definitely very interesting, right? And it's a model that exists definitely in Nigeria, right? But in terms of the level of success, looking at the potential right, across the world and what it has been able to achieve, you're not seeing that here, right, in Nigeria. In other African markets, you are seeing those collaborations come up, right? Seeing all of those things take up. You see, go to South Africa, you have Discovery, who they have a full bouquet of financial
Yes.
services, and for example, if you come to Nigeria, right, again, insurance is not part of our culture, right? It's not part of our reality. And so, how do we get people to understand insurance and get them to a point where they can buy insurance? I think one of the models that has not also worked, if I go to the ones that has worked that I've seen, is leveraging mobile money and,
Yes,
and,
like
and the likes,
Kenya.
right? Yes, if you look at the Kenya market, thanks for mentioning that. Mobile money is huge. Look at Ghana, massive, right? But that's not replicated in Nigeria, and so that poses a challenge. So if you're a player in the Ghanaian market, the Kenya market, where you have embedded with M-Pesa, for example, right, and you're able to offer those solutions, directly to customers, that brings a challenge for you when you come into Nigeria because mobile money is not first
Okay.
first option for a lot of people in Nigeria. So in Nigeria, what has we have seen has worked is embedded insurance, right? And this is still even in the early days, right? You see a lot of partnerships with the telcos, and the telcos are very huge, and in terms of the data and the access to customers that they have. Embedded insurance is huge. Embedded insurance has a lot of potential, not just in Nigeria and across Africa, right? In terms of the reach, in terms of penetration, getting people to actually see insurance, getting people to taste insurance, getting people to understand insurance, getting people to experience insurance, right? So we see a lot of embedded insurance models with the telcos. We're seeing embedded insurance with fintechs as well, right? Who have large customer base, right? And they're able to offer insurance as part of a bouquet of services that they are offering, to their customers, right? And they understand these customers. These customers are coming to them for loans. They're coming to them to deposit money. So they understand their financial patterns and they're able to say, okay, these challenges that you're having, insurance can solve it.
Yep.
Health, instead of coming for a loan for insurance, hey, we want you to get a loan, right? But insurance can actually help you, So what that would mean is that you're not withdrawing from the wallet, right? Right, and the money is staying a lot more within their books, right? But the insurance is taking care of that need and taking away that headache. What that brings back to them is that they are satisfying the customer and they're able to keep that customer within their app, right? So I think embedded insurance is a very interesting model that will definitely pick up um, in the coming years. And one of the only other things I'll just mention is that when you look at embedded insurance, it's important to also see that there's a need for continued engagement, because yes, it's good to bring people in, but keeping them is
It's
another
key.
thing. And so yeah, yeah, coming from a point where a lot of people who are going to be seeing it, are going to be engaging in this, they're first time insurance buyers. So how do you help them understand what they bought, what they're enjoying, and the understanding that they need to consciously pay for this subsequently, so that they're not enjoying it once and just dropping off, or not even using it at all, which is something that we see a lot.
I really like the better insurance model. Damola is one of those things like he has a huge promise. I do want to see him being more engaging, as you mentioned at the very end.
Yeah,
Right. I think there are a lot of stuff that we can actually do from an experiential perspective, right? Using
yeah.
location data, using a lot of behavioral insights to make it more tangible, right?
Yeah.
I want to double back on the actual 12-week course that you guys built.
Okay.
What What has been the journey, and maybe when you guys started actually building that particular accelerator, and you had a view of the world, right? This is what we want, and then it has maybe evolved through the years. Can you share with us and the audience a bit of that journey?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has come out of that is it has reinforced the importance of partnerships, right? Collaboration. When it comes to insurance, I think we have been siloed for a long time, and within insurance companies, we see that even departments are siloed,
Yeah.
so there's no sharing of information, right? A lot of things are changing, at least from the AXA point of view, right, in terms of driving innovation and making that front and center, right? On the program side, right, partnerships is very key, right? We know that we can't solve all the challenges within the value chain ourselves. A lot of things we try to do internally, right? But how do we solve these challenges faster, quick, and more efficiently? And so that's why collaboration is very key. But the way that the program goes about it is, let's collaborate on the journey to solving those challenges. Right. So yes, we can go out and say, okay, hey, we are having challenges with claims management. Oh, you have a claims management solution. Bring it, let's use it. No, come into the program, right? We are unique, right? We have our own journey, we have our own experiences. Okay, come into the program. Let's help you understand insurance. Let's help you understand these challenges, and then let's come to the table and solve those challenges. At the end of it, maybe you come up with a solution, or maybe your solution that you came into the program with is seeing it from a certain point of view. But in engaging, you're able to fine tune it, and it becomes something. Basically, you achieve product market fit, right? We help you within that ecosystem. What then happens afterwards is, hey, we'd like to use the solution, right? However, we're not also saying that you don't take it to the market, because at the end of the day, if everyone is using this solution or more people are using it, it's better for the industry, right? A lot more people will get insured, a lot more people will experience insurance better, right? So, what we'll just ask for is, hey, we helped in this journey, so maybe some professional, you know, treatment in terms of costs, right? But that is just to say, quote and unquote, thank you for the sweat equity that we put in that journey with you through the program. So we don't do any form of investment, right? So we just look at, once we find the solutions that make sense, we're able to then have some commercial engagements and happily introduce you to the market. Say, okay, this solution has worked for us. That's maybe it might be interesting for you as well.
And the moment you guys do like, what's the size of the batches? right? David, any aha moments, from the batch perspective as well? Because you're right, some people come out, they don't know anything about insurance, and then maybe they fall
Yeah.
in love and they end up building something totally different, repurposing the product for AXA, right? And say, oh, I end up with something better than I actually started, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we work with five startups per cohort,
Nice.
right? And that's intentional so that we can have those hands-on engagement because you'll be having engagement with players in the industry. You also have engagement with the business teams within the business, right? And so you have those one-on-one sessions, those engagement sessions, co-creation sessions, right? And so it's been interesting. People who have no bearing in the insurance, right? Martech companies, health tech companies, well, we have some insurtechs as well, right? But the understanding of the problem is a lot different because they're outside. And I think this program is unique and it's helped us and it's helping us because instead of the okay, you have a solution, bring it, let's use it, and then we see that it doesn't work and then we just throw it out and the report is then we tried solutions. All these tech guys, they're just bringing solutions. They don't understand insurance. Okay, no problems. We're not going that route. Let's work with you on the journey, right? So if on that journey we see that the solution doesn't solve the problem, you have feedback directly from the market, right?
100%. Yeah.
And so that's value for you, right? And on our own side, we know what we cannot repeat anymore, right? In terms of looking at other solutions in the future, right? So, but if we see that we're able to come up with a solution, right, and we've seen that with a number of guys from the program where the version that they came into the program with is a lot different from
Nice. Nice and
what it
day.
is today, right? It's night and day, definitely, right? And we see them even coming in, with one module. Today, they have three, four modules that they're able to break down and say, okay, they understand the market a lot better and they're able to say, okay, this is generally what happens in insurance companies. So we can tailor these solutions to different use cases and different, insurers as the case may be.
That's great because one of those things is actually people solving problems, right? That are there to
Yeah.
be solved, right? I like the fact that you guys actually give them the problems. Say we have these problem
Yeah.
statements, and we're going to co-create together to solve these problems.
Yeah.
Your decade experience now in insurance, right? There
Yeah.
must have been some aha moments now that you throwing back, looking back, he kind of like crystallized. Oh, jeez, I never thought about this way, right? Maybe you can share some of that with the others.
Yeah, sure. I think starting off in insurance was very interesting, was new for me. And so I developed interest in the innovation part of insurance on the back of just on trying to see what's happening in other spaces and what are the opportunities that has opened for us. And so from those engagements, that dovetailed into the InsurTech Business Series podcast.
Yes.
And one of the things that I learned, through the podcast, right, and this has been very true, is that our challenges are similar, right,
Yes.
when it comes to insurance, right? I think trust is one
Key,
thing that
paramount.
I'm like, wow. So even in the developed markets, we see that there's still this challenge of trust. So it's not unique to us. I'm like, okay, if this is a global challenge, then we have to look at it. So whatever anybody is building, you have to look at it from the point of view that if you are taking it to other markets, you have to be that solution has to solve for trust. Right,
Yeah.
that solution has to solve for trust because that is still very, very key. I think the experience with claims, I think, is something else that has come to fore. I think, and that's why I'm a lot interested in this parametric insurance model and how we can adapt it to not just agri insurance, so flood, other things like travel and things like that. So I think that was very, very big for me, right, in terms of aha moments. I think the other one is recently, last year, we had a conversation with Teresa Blissing, right? So she wrote a book on the Asian market, right? The Asian insurance innovation market, and in that book, she painted a lot of, a picture of the landscape and the players within the space, the Zongans, the Pingans, right, the Habitos, and we see it was very interesting to see a lot of similarities between the Asian market and the African market. So the nuances of culture, the nuances of religion, right, demography as well, right. So I'm like, hey, I mean, as an innovator in this market, that's the next market that you can look at. Right? Because if
Interesting.
you're able to crack it and solve for this market, right, and that's the African market, you have similar things on that side, and so you can easily enter into those markets. And we are beginning to see very interesting things, on the fintech side, the banking side. We see players, opening up shop in other markets, after cracking the space here in Africa, opening up in America and Asia, right? And we are able to see how seamless, that is. So I think for insurance, it's very interesting, in terms of our realities, right? So insurance didn't originate from these markets, right? So so we have to go on the journey of localizing it, and so that's why micro insurance is very interesting to me, right? So localizing it to our realities, to how we do things, and so once you're able to crack that, the Asian market is a very interesting one, and I think that can be, the very next step for a lot of people who are looking to enter into new markets outside of Africa.
I was very excited about parametric insurance, and I'm still bullish on parametric insurance. When excited when it came out, and bullish because smart
Yeah.
contracts big into
Yeah.
Web3 and distributed ledger technology. And you mentioned trust. That's what got me actually into the parametric insurance, because if it's a contract and it's smart, right?
Yeah.
And if it hits the criteria, you get a payout.
Payouts,
Yes.
yeah. No explanations.
And exactly.
No loss adjusters. No back and forth.
Exactly. Because
If it happens, just get paid.
you get paid,
If it
right?
doesn't happen,
You
no
don't
payment.
get a payment,
And it's
right?
clear.
And it's very clear, it's very transparent, and the contract needs to be a bit more simple as well,
Yeah.
and that thing could actually bridge the gap, right? Because a lot of people have the perception, oh, I have a claim now, I have to call the insurer, I have to convince them to pay me. I don't think they're going to pay me, and all those things. Right, the most
Yeah.
I do like that, and the trust element. All right, I
Yeah.
think that's key. Through the series of people that
Yeah.
if you interviewed as well, the podcast, the role,
Yeah.
I wanted to understand some insights. Some people that came at it a totally different way. That you weren't expecting. You say, I never thought about that particular passion. I really like the fact that you mentioned Asia and Africa, the proximity and the similarities.
Yeah.
It's a very, very interesting insight.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've spoken to a lot of people, right, across the continent and even outside, right, and very interesting perspectives. And many of them, if not most of the people we've spoken with, are not insurance people. I think that's one of the things
That's
that
the insight.
they are not insurance people. And one of the things that we've seen is that for the change that the insurance industry needs, it has to come from outside. And when I say outside,
Different thinking.
different thinking, different mindset.
Yes.
Right. We are beginning to see people who are in other segments, other sectors, have interest in the insurance space. But then people who are innovating in the space, at least people who I've spoken with, they are not insurance people. Right. So they look at this problem and say, how can we solve it? Right. Not seeing the how big the problem is from the outside, but coming in and say, hey, this is going to take a longer a lot of might, right? So I think that's one thing that has been evident. I think one of the things that we also learned from the conversations is that you have to you have to think long term if you're coming to the insurance space.
Big time.
You have to think long term if you're
time.
coming to innovate within the insurance space. You can't just drive this yes, there's blitz scaling, and we see how the likes of Lemonade has tried to push in that line. They still have their critics in terms of what the numbers are doing on the on the stock exchange, right, and how the evaluation is, right. But on the other side, you see what is happening back end. And I follow them a bit, and we see a lot of insights in terms of how they're leveraging AI, in their operations, and how the operational cost is almost flat, right? which is not the case when you look at the insurance industry. When you look at insurance, the more you get businesses, operations and expenses will definitely go up when you get transactions, right? But you see that from the tech point of view, if you're looking at it from a different model, right, it's flat. They don't have insurance companies traditionally they have the buildings, you have agents, right? Not that you don't want agents anymore, right? But those are the realities. Those come with costs and expenses, right? But you see that long term, I think that will pay off.
100%, 100%, no
Yes,
doubt,
it will pay off.
no
It
doubt.
will definitely pay off. So you can't look at it today, right? And so I think the third thing that has been evident for me, and I think COVID was a huge help to this, is yes, there's a role for innovation and technology, right? But it's not quite disruption.
Yeah.
It's not quite a disruption conversation. It's an evolution conversation. I think when COVID hit, we were, oh, insurtech is going to disrupt, things like that. But it's more of an evolution, right? Because insurance needs to still remain insurance, right? However, how do we deliver it in a different way? Because the market is different. The customers are changing. The customers' requests and needs are evolving. So how do we get insurance to this new reality? And I guess that's where technology and innovation and different mindset comes in, right? So it's not all about technology and innovation, right? And I think one of the major challenges that a lot of insurers had when COVID came, and there was a lot of buzzwords around, is digitization and digitalization, right? So
Very different things.
something as simple as forms, proposal forms when you want to buy insurance, right? So you just took that form and made a digital version, created a Google version of that form, or a Microsoft form, right? That is not digitalization,
Yep.
right? That will not take you anywhere. So look at that form. It's physical. Oh, we want to make it digital now, right? What part of those questions do I need to take out, so that instead of this customer filling it for 20, 30 minutes, it just takes 5 minutes? What parts of this engagement can I remove so that it takes 3 clicks for a customer to buy the insurance products without compromising for security, data requirements, and the likes, right? I think that is the journey that a lot of people, a lot of insurance companies need to go on, right? It can't do digitization. It has to be digitalization. Looking at the whole process, how can I improve it from the customer's point of view? Not just putting your product on your website, and once you click on it, you are still maybe there are some that you can fill the form on there. There are some that you have to call someone. So it's just there for viewing, right? But once I go to your website, maybe I just need to provide my government number, and a lot of
Self-employed.
information is provided, right? So I think that those are things that has come to fore in terms of all of our engagements, and this is still continuous in terms of the learnings that we are seeing, and there's a lot more still to come.
But that's a great insight, Damola, because yeah, you're right. It's like an iceberg, right? When you innovate and you come in with
Yeah.
full of energy, but you see the top, where you don't see everything that goes on the value chain, right? Because it
Yeah.
has to go all the way to the reinsurer, right? And
Yeah, exactly.
and then the
and those the reinsurance, they are secret. Let me rephrase that, right? I think they are very important in the journey, right? And one of the things that we've seen, especially on the point around, these guys are coming with that enthusiasm into the market, and almost like the bubble is burst, right? You see, when you have engagement with the insurers, and this is something that we heard a lot, and I've seen also, on my side, is that you come with this product idea, these things, and you get the kickback, right? Not because that insurer doesn't see your idea, but there's some treaties in place, there are some arrangements in place, and this product will go against that. And if I don't adhere to those things, no insurer is going to receive or collect those risks. And I don't want those risks to sit fully within my books, because
Exactly.
I've not even done this product, I've not done this thing before. So this can actually be a bad thing at the end of the year. So there's a lot of reasons why they are pulling back. And I guess that's why you have to look at it from a long-term point of view. Understand the point of view of the insurers, right? Not that they don't want to innovate. In fact, insurance was better out of innovation, right? How can we protect ourselves, right? So this has been this way for a long time. How can you understand their perspective and propose a way that would help them achieve their goals without compromising on the core,
Yeah,
right?
a
So
hundred
yeah,
percent. It has to be a journey, right? Even simple things back in the days, we were looking at just
yeah,
taking a clause out, and you're like, you can't take that clause out.
you
Don't touch it.
can't.
But lemonade was a very interesting one, right? Because it came as a
Yeah,
disruptor. I think the model was very interesting with the,
yeah,
also the actual business model, right? The
yeah,
AI, they were using the AI when people were not hyping AI, right?
yeah.
Around the claims analysis as well and onboarding.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I think it's going to pay out on the long term as well because you mentioned something very interesting there because I was looking at the reports and I always
mm-hmm.
that was a way triggered for me the cost per employee, right?
Exactly.
When you compare it with other insurers, you can see the scale when it really starts humming.
Way
It's gonna
exactly.
it's gonna hum quite well and then listen very fast. So they're going to be around, to be honest.
Yeah.
Talking about some lemonade and the future of Africa, the future of tech, right? What do you want to see over the next 5 years? You can bring maybe some regulatory change as well, throw it in there if you want, right? But what do you want to see over the next
Yeah.
5 years happening in Africa? What's exciting you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is very interesting is regulation. I think you can't underestimate the place of regulation, right? And I think that we are seeing a lot of regulators be a lot more open to innovation, which is very important. Very, very important, I must say.
It's key.
We need a lot more, right? There is a after conversation, right? So free trade agreement for making Africa one market, right? Not on the insurance side, but really generally across the African Union, right? So how can we leverage this, right? How can we take advantage of this, right? I'm an insurtech in Nigeria and I can do business, and I'm just saying, right? Do business in Gabon, I can do in Togo, Ghana, and things like that. Regulation will play a huge role, right? In markets, how are you facilitating this innovation and innovators, right? So we see in Nigeria, for example, last year or thereabouts, there was the release of, I mentioned earlier, the microinsurance guideline that was released, and then there was a web aggregator guideline, right? So this is for innovators, right, who are looking to enter into this space to distribute insurance. All right. So beyond that, right, how else can innovators play within the space? So I know that in the Nigerian market, for example, there's a regulatory sandbox,
Yes.
right? So I guess it's getting people to know about the sandbox, but then also join the sandbox and be on a journey with the regulator to help the regulator understand how we can innovate and get it. Because the interest of the regulator is to grow the market.
Yes.
They are not selling insurance. Theirs is to open up the market for those who are selling to basically eat more. Right. So I think regulation will play a huge role over the next 5 years, looking at 2030. I think insurers themselves will play a huge role. And you see interesting things from the likes of, and I'll go to South Africa, Kenya, and talk on Nigeria as well. You see South Africa, you see Old Mutual, right? Old
Yes.
Mutual
Very, very
working
active. Very
with,
active.
yes, working with like of Pineapple, right? Working with some of these guys, directly, right? You see in Kenya, right? You see the likes of Britam, for example, who are working with innovators directly. They have a lab that they work with innovators, right? You come to Nigeria as well, the likes of AXA, who is pioneering innovation management and just engagement with innovators and helping them understand insurance, but then also solving some of the challenges within their value chain, right? So I think that the role of of insurers has to evolve, right? To enablers, right? So, how can you enable these innovators do a lot more for you and for the industry, right? So, if that is through innovation programs, for example, if that is through investments, which I'm
Key,
very keen on,
key.
right? Because you will be able to help them understand the challenges. You'll be able to hold them on that journey to get them to where they need to get to. So I think that the insurers have a huge role to play, especially in terms of accelerating the growth in the industry. I think those two areas are very key. The regulator side, which we are seeing a lot of push, but on the insurer side, a lot more is still expected.
Now, I'm very, very big on really bringing the regulator in. I saw that you invited the model as well to take part of the conversation, bringing the
Yeah,
industry
yeah.
stakeholders to get their views, right, to shape regulation. And of course, like
Yeah.
anything, it will take time, right? But
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
the direction of listening to the industry and trying to implement that. And insurance as well, of
Yeah.
course, they have a huge part to play. It's an investment at the end of the
Huge,
day.
huge part.
But
Exactly.
it's learners, right? That's the only way you can.
Yeah.
It's trial and error, like editing. If you want to be an innovator, you have to try things. Um, uh,
Yeah.
Demal, if I let you go, I want to ask you a big question, right? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs really wanted to build in this space? You've seen a lot, right? So I know you've shared a lot of insights through the conversation.
Yeah.
But if there's any parts and advice that you want to give, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to mention, right, in terms of engagement and what I expect to see going forward, we do a lot of work, right, in terms of engagement with all of the key stakeholders, right? So we have this uh, insurance innovation roundtable that we started last
Yes.
year, and very interesting how the conversation went last year, bringing forth some of the realities as to why insurtechs are struggling, and why insurers are not so keen. They have the understanding that innovation is key and it's in front of everybody. But the how is where the question mark is. So the reason for this roundtable is to bring everybody together to say, okay, how can we solve these things? What's holding us back? And this is something that is happening quarterly. And so we're having one, coming up soon, right? And so for innovators coming into the space, what I would say is you have to get to understand the market. And some of these platforms, for example, they are very key for you to understand the market. So you understand what the pain point is for, for the insurer, right? You want to work with so insurer. You have to understand how are they solving it now, right? And then how can your solution not cost them more, but help them to be better customer experience, right? Because they all one of the major challenges for insurers is the cost of implementation.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So you have to have that. You can't just come and say, "Oh, this thing is $50,000." Okay, I earn in naira. I sell my products in naira, so make it make sense for me, right? So, um, you have to come to the point of value, right? I won't advise you to offer free, right? But you have to be ready to go on a journey with an insurer or insurers or the market, right? I think that's one thing that has been lacking, and I think that is very important for you to have in place. I think the other thing, and I'll stop there, is scalability, right? From day one, have that at the back of your mind. You're not building for just one market, not just one segment. You have to have that wide view. You can start small, but your outlook has to be. You can start with just life insurance, but the way you design that product should be transversal, right? It should cut across, right? That the experience is going to be seamless for everyone in every market, in every sphere, right? Look at what exists in the market and not just do something different for different sake, right? But solve a problem. And I think that's one of the things that our current offerings in the market is not doing. It's solving a problem, but it's not solving the problem. Now, what do I mean? The problem for the customer in Africa, in Nigeria, in Kenya is different from the problem for someone in the UK or in the US, right? So understand what the problem is, then look at that life insurance that you are saying you want to focus on, and design that product to solve the problem. They will come back, right? So initially, maybe you might force them, or let me not say force you push them, to get the insurance, but they'll be pulled when the experience is seamless, when the product compared to value is cheap, right? And everything is easy. Right? I think that's where we need to get to, and that's the viewpoint that I think that innovators need to have as they innovate for insurance on the African continent. And the African continent, I'm talking about the different markets within the continent.
Demola, this has been absolutely brilliant. Demola, where can people find you? Apart the podcast, right? We can give a shout out to get to the
Yeah.
podcast. Make sure we get the name right, and maybe is
Yes.
LinkedIn. Let us know where you hang out these days.
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn, right? Yes, so I'm on Adedamola Oloko on LinkedIn. InsurTech Business Series also on LinkedIn. So just search for InsurTech Business Series on LinkedIn.
It's a great one.
So yes. But the podcast is InsurTech Business Series Podcast, or IBS Podcast. So we have conversations with innovators across the world to just see what technology and innovation can do for the insurance industry here in Africa and across the world as well. So yes, you can catch me up on there as well. So yeah, LinkedIn and on the podcast.
Thanks again, Demola. That's the pod.